Christian Pulisic is contracted to Borussia Dortmund until the ripe old age of 21. The new Zlatan, meaning he's tall, Swedish, and a goal scorer, hearts Dortmund. Dimitri Payet continues to hate life in London. CONCACAF could be getting significantly smaller, and the African Cup of Nations never falls down when it comes to entertainment. It's Tuesday, January 24th, and as Brooke said yesterday, it's a Tuesdays with Taylor edition of The Goalmouth. I'm Taylor Rockwell, filling in for Daryl Grove, who will be filling in for Taylor Rockwell later this week. First on the agenda, future World Player of the Year Christian Pulisic has committed his future to Borussia Dortmund by signing a contract extension with the German club. The U.S. international's old deal was set to expire in 2019, but has now been extended all the way until June of 2020. The one-year extension is likely meant to reward Pulisic's significant growth, while at the same time signal Dortmund's intention to hold on to one of their top young players. The 18-year-old had already been linked with moves to Liverpool and RB Leipzig, so the one-year extension keeps him tied to the club, but also increases his transfer value should another suitor come calling. For his part, Pulisic says he prioritized continued development over the possibility of big bucks. In a club statement, he remarked, quote, "I still have a lot to learn. I feel Dortmund offers the best conditions to do that," end quote. Meanwhile, Dortmund seems to have really embraced the Hunger Games model of pitting talented youngsters against each other in order to see who comes out on top. So far this season, the club has given first-team minutes to Pulisic, who's 18, Ousmane Dembele, who's 19, Emre Mor, 19, Felix Passlack, 18, and Julian Weigl, 21. Evidently not content with that cast of youngsters, Dortmund went out and signed 17-year-old Sweden international Alexander Isak for 10 million euros. The teenage forward has 2 caps for Sweden, both of which came this January, one against Ivory Coast and one against Slovakia. In his time with AIK, his Swedish club, Isak scored 10 goals in 24 games and was dubbed Sweden's new Zlatan Ibrahimovic by teammate Chinedu Obasi. I bring that up only because that seems to be the point that the newspapers have focused on, given that roughly 80% of the stories I've seen about this transfer mention the new Zlatan somewhere in the headline. Isak reportedly turned down an offer from Real Madrid to sign for Dortmund, a fact which Real probably won't forget when they aggressively pursue Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang later this summer. Sticking with transfer news, it's the story that just won't die. Dimitri Payet is still somehow a West Ham player. The London club has reportedly rejected a third bid from Marseille, which was believed to be in the neighborhood of £22.5 million. Here are some more numbers for you. West Ham want $30 million. Until they get that, Payet will continue to train with the U23s. He was initially bought from Marseille in June 2015 for £10.7 million and was rewarded with a new contract in February 2016. Hooray for numbers. Speaking of entities that are looking to make a move, reports indicate that the Caribbean Football Union might be seeking a permanent transfer out of CONCACAF. According to several outlets, including the Daily Mail, at a Caribbean Football Union Executive Committee summit in Miami, Antigua's Gordon Derrick, who is the CFU president, was given the green light to begin preparing a roadmap for the 31-nation-strong organization to split from CONCACAF to become the Caribbean Football Confederation. It's a genuinely fascinating proposal and could have serious ramifications for the future of soccer in both North and South America, but I think my favorite part of the article is the Daily Mail's attempt to throw shade at England's former colonies. Quote, "The blueprint is understood to have the support of 26 of the Caribbean territories who are fed up with being dictated to by the American and Canadian power brokers on CONCACAF and want the freedom to fund their own youth development," end quote. Now, Chuck Blazer is one thing. Yeah, he's definitely corrupt, hence the indictment. But Canada? Sure, the president of CONCACAF is Canadian, but he's only been there for less than a year. And the idea that shady Canadian power brokers have been pulling strings behind the scenes to orchestrate things in such a way that Canada still doesn't qualify for the Hex, let alone the World Cup, takes some serious mental gymnastics. Moreover, I very much enjoy that the Mail casually mentions the indictments against Jack Warner and Jeffrey Webb as evidence of the corruption within the organization that the CFU is seeking to extradite itself from, but fails to note that both are from CFU countries. Both are former CONCACAF presidents. Warner represented Trinidad and Tobago, Webb represented Antigua. In fact, of the 7 CONCACAF officials who have been indicted on corruption charges, 4 are from CFU countries. Now, at this point, it's perhaps worth noting that I actually think this split could be a good idea. I think if we have the new reality of a 48-team World Cup, which we do, then shifts like this are going to occur. And if it means that new teams make the World Cup and soccer is able to grow in areas where it otherwise wouldn't, then that's great. But trying to couch this action as throwing off the yoke of outside oppression is disingenuous at best. And I actually think the narrative of countries that have no real way of making the World Cup would prefer to have a way to make the World Cup makes for a fairly compelling argument on its own. But maybe that's just me. And finally, Monday was a dramatic day in the African Cup of Nations. Algeria crashed out of the group stage after failing to record a single win, as Senegal and Tunisia advanced out of Group B. They'll join Burkina Faso and Cameroon in the knockout rounds, both of those countries having advanced out of Group A. Group C wraps up on Tuesday, Group D does the same thing on Thursday. Prior to the start of the African Cup of Nations, Algeria was the third best bet to win the tournament at 7-1 odds. Gabon, the host nation who were eliminated in Group A on Sunday, had the fourth best odds at 8-1. The Ivory Coast, who are currently third in their group and play on Tuesday, were the tournament favorites, meaning that 3 of the top 4 teams could be eliminated before the group stage is even completed. And yet, all of that news pales in comparison to the raging internet debate regarding Senegal goalkeeper Kadim Ndiaye. In the closing minutes of Senegal's 2-2 draw with Algeria, Ndiaye started to take a goal kick, then crumpled to the ground. He required several minutes of treatment for what appeared to be a cramp. Others, however, felt that it was a deliberate attempt to waste time, particularly when replays showed that Ndiaye had clipped his own heel while running to take the kick. Now, some say he cramped mid-stride, that's why there was contact, but I'm inclined to think that it was a particularly crafty and somewhat hilarious attempt to kill off the match. You can check out today's Goalmouth newsletter for a link to the video and have your say if you're so inclined. And on that note, that's it for today's Goalmouth. You can explore all of these stories in more depth by subscribing to that newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Thank you to all of our recent reviewers out there, especially user Qureshi G, who wrote that, quote, "George is absolutely my favorite of the 5 co-hosts. He's definitely the best," end quote. Truer words, Qureshi G, truer words. I've been Taylor Rockwell. George Qureshi will be with you tomorrow. But until then, here's today's Goalmouth top tip. Pay homage to our secret Canadian overlords now and benefit later.